Warning: the following content contains language that may be inappropriate for younger viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Welcome to the Let's Get Heavy podcast, your exclusive backstage pass to the realm of heavy music. Join us as we engage in conversations with amazing bands and emerging talents who are making waves in the scene. This episode is titled Mosh Pit Etiquette, and joining us for this topic is Rob from Thrashatouille, Grant from Acherontia Styx, and Jim from Hammer. So let's get heavy. Hello everyone, welcome to a live edition of the Let's Get Heavy podcast. Co-hosting with me tonight is Sean Payne. Say hello, Sean.
Hello, hello.
It's been a while.
Baz.
And we are also joined by three special guests in order. We've got Grant from Acherontia Styx, Jim from Hammer based in Edinburgh, and of course none other than Rob from Thrashatouille. How is all doing, guys? Say hello.
Yeah.
Say hello to the lovely people who are watching on their phones at home or even at work.
Good evening.
Excellent.
How's it going?
So as you know, we're here to discuss mosh pit etiquette. So if you are watching live, come and get involved. And if you're watching back on, or watching or listening back on YouTube and Spotify, by all means, come and leave your comments in the section, so that, because everyone's going to have an opinion on mosh pit. I can't even speak. Mosh pit etiquette. So, as so many people will already be aware that mosh pits are a staple in many live music performances, particularly in the likes of punk, metal, and hardcore. There are some other genres as well, but while they can be fun for fans to engage with the music and express themselves, me personally, I feel times that mosh pits are becoming a little unsafe and a little bit violent at times, especially when you're attending gigs and festivals, and people are just going into these pits and purposely hurting others. And some bands, and I'm not going to say all, some bands are encouraging this. And the reason for this episode, I'm going to pass it over to Jim, because this whole episode pretty much started through Jim. Because I seen a Instagram story from Jim, and you were kind of raged. You were a little bit. Let's be honest here, Jim. So explain, what was your experience, and why did this post come about?
Well, following me on Instagram, you probably know that I'm a massive whinge. I whinge about most things. So I'm glad you found some entertainment in this one. But yeah, recently I have noticed that people are going a bit mental in the pit. In a way, you're meant to go mental in a pit, but in a way that is a bit detrimental to themselves and others. And I've had a couple of experiences recently as being in the audience at a few shows of just not having the best time, because I'm more worried about not just my safety, but that of like people around me when I'm at a gig. And when I'm at a gig, like everybody else, I just want to relax and enjoy the bands. But I'm finding more and more I'm having to like watch out around me. So I think it happened. I think the specific post you might be referring to is one I made when I went to see it was the week after. Sorry, the weekend before I went to see Coffin Mulch in Edinburgh.
What a
Wicked
name.
gig.
What a band name.
Real good. Death metal from like Glasgow, like so sick, playing in the Mash House.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got a bit mad. Like my girlfriend got like punched in the stomach by this young
Wow.
lad. Yeah. Like proper like smacked into. I was getting like battered around, and like you could see other people like around the edge of the pit were getting a bit upset by it as well. And like the problem is like I think there are some people that are doing it maybe a bit maliciously, but I think a lot of it is just a lot of young people don't really realize their own strength, or like that people around them might not be, vibing exactly the same way they are. Because I said to this boy, I took him aside and I was like, man, you just like punched my girlfriend in the stomach. And I think he was like bricking it that I was gonna, like smack him or something. But I just said, look, I want you to have a good time, man. I'm not having a go at you, but just like be careful. And he was like so apologetic. But the one thing he said took me, stuck with me, saying, this is just what we do, at gigs these days. And it is. I went to Glasgow the week after to see Health, um, who have got heavy like bits in their music, but they're like a mix of like electronic music and industrial. And the pits there were like brutal, and I'm just like trying to enjoy. They're playing like the song from Max Payne 3. I love that game. They did the soundtrack to it, and I'm like vibing. And there's just people like flying around, waving their arms around, flailing, and just like there was just particularly there were these two guys in the pit that were causing a bad time, and there was one guy that was like bigger than everybody else and just kept flying into everybody. And yeah, as a spectator, I'm fortunate in a way because I'm quite a big guy. Like I can kind of take it a little bit, but on the flip side of that, people also think you're up for it when you when you're not. And then I had been in a few pits recently. I like to go in a pit and like I was at Damnation. This is a festival where you wouldn't think anything like this would happen at all. I got like full on trampled. Like I went down in a pit. No one was like helping me up. No one was like sheltering me. I got like trampled for like a good 10 seconds before I could get up. And then, it happened again. A bunch of people like fell on top of me and it just kept going. And it's just like, this is Damnation, man. This is supposed to be like, heavy as fuck, but like quite a chill environment for a festival. And, yeah, bit odd. Obviously, like there's a lot of like things like from hardcore that are coming into metal, which is sick. I love hardcore. I love the ethos, but the ethos of hardcore for me is about looking after yourself, living your best life. I hate that term, sorry, but looking after yourselves. But there are people that are like, two-stepping and proper flinging themselves around when there's not the room for it, and they're bashing people around. And I love people having a good time. This is what like metal and alternative music is about. It's about going a bit mad. But like I remember growing up, being in pits. If someone went down, you helped them up. You never saw any of the spin kicky sort of stuff. And I think there is a time and a place for that if there's like room. But like again, a few months ago, I was at Banshees in Edinburgh, quite a small place. And these two guys are in there and they're just flailing their limbs around, elbows are out and everything. And they're smacking people in the face. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? It's like, like little things like don't use your elbows. Try and T-Rex it, keep the arms in, push people around if they're up for it. And also it's just like, I'm seeing so many people now, like you see like a pit start and like no one wants to go anywhere near it. Cause people are like attacking people on the edge of the pit. It used to be that it was like sort of self-contained, but you're getting to the point now where like I saw this guy like at Fulci a few weeks ago in Glasgow, just like run across the pit and like pretty much launch himself into the audience. And it's just like we playing at, man. Like these people, you shouldn't have to be like pitting to be closer to the stage. You know what I mean? There's going to be some people that just want to be closer to the stage because it's easy. They're going to enjoy it more. But you're just seeing a lot of like selfish behavior, and I don't know. Like I don't know. Like maybe I'm just an old git. I think that's probably most of it. But
well, I must be in that same sort of boat then as well because I kind of feel the same way. And my little experience was which we briefly touched on a friend's band, DEFCON 1. I wanted to show two of my mates some support because they had just recently joined. It was their first gig with DEFCON 1. They were supporting King 810 or 810, like I say, whichever way you pronounce it. DEFCON 1 did a cracking job for their first gig, brilliant. And then King come on stage. And then afterwards, the vocalist after the first song was like, if you see anyone standing still, fucking move them. If you've got to hit them, hit them. And I was like, whoa, right, this is right. I'm away. I left. I've supported my mates. I texted them. I said, look, mate, I cannot stay. I'm not supporting that. If they're purposely telling people to punch and move people, especially my wife, who some of you may know is on crutches. And she's got to stand because she's got hip dysplasia, which it's not cool to try and push someone around with that sort of disability. So yeah, it's just at times I do feel like it's getting a little bit out of hand. And one of those little rooms that you've just touched on there, Jim, we've got one
Mm.
called Little Buildings. Far too small for spin kicking and windmilling and all that. It's just absolutely insane at
Yeah,
times.
and you are starting to see some artists like encouraging this kind of behavior. I think the big one people might have read about this is Malevolence at Bloodstock. You know, they had that giant pit going around like the tower in the middle,
They
which
did.
is cool if you think about it. It's like cool. That's metal as fuck. You know, people spinning around a tower having a good time. But apparently there was like a medical emergency, and as a result, like people couldn't get through or something. I don't know the specifics. I don't want to like, come down on Bloodstock either because I love the festival. It's a great thing, and Malevolence has got some riffs. But like, I think there's a there's a boundary, and it's like people are obsessed with their image and like wanting the cool footage and the gram and all that, but it's like the people are like a real people, man, with like bones and like things that can break. And at the end of the day, like as I say, like I'm into metal because I love it. Like it's where I go to relax. But like I'm at a point now where like some shows I literally can't relax. Instead of watching the band, I'm watching people around me, and not just for myself. Sometimes I'm like, because I'm a bigger dude, I feel like silly, but I feel like responsible for people around me, and I'm like trying to protect people, and and it's again, it's not like coming from a place of like, what the fuck are you doing, you arsehole. It's like like trying to teach people a lesson, but it's annoying that I have to do that. I'm going to a gig to watch a gig, not to like teach a bunch of people how to behave.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm an old bastard. So that might be the case.
No, mate. Like I say, I think I'm the same. I mean, I have not been in a Potter mosh pit since '09, and that was when Devil Driver did the world record attempt at Download '09. And obviously they got two massive circle pits because Devil Driver weren't expecting them to split the crowd down the middle with a middle-sized barrier, so they had a crowd on either
Aye.
side, middle barrier in the middle. Devil Driver weren't expecting that, so they had two massive circle pits on either end, and I was on the left, and fell down. Similar, no one picked us up. Trampled on, someone stood on my knee.
Jesus.
So that, to be fair, it's just put a fear in us because it's like if I fall down,
Yeah.
can I trust these people to pick this up? I can trust me pals and stuff, but sometimes if I go to gigs on my own,
Yeah.
you know what I
It
mean?
used it used to be that was just sort of the thing. It was the everyone did it. Someone went down, you get them up, and you generally see that. But I, having experienced that at Damnation, and like it was kind of sucky. And like for me as well, like like I had a shoulder injury a few years ago from doing martial arts. And again, this is kind of, I guess the point here is like, yeah, when you're going into a pity area, there is a degree of you got to be ready for it. But like, I injured myself doing some sparring, and it was a case of the other person taking it too far in an environment that is supposed to be, at the end of the day, something you do to enjoy yourself. And it's a kind of similar, man. Like, and then with that injury, like I've had surgery and it's kind of better now, but I still worry like something's going to reoccur. And for me, that's like a minor thing. But as you say, there are people with disabilities, there are people with hidden disabilities, etc., that just want to be in the crowd as they have the right to be, and they don't feel safe. And I hate that. I hate that people don't feel safe at gigs because for me, like metal's about community. It's about feeling like you fit in, and just because you're not a big person like myself, that sucks that people would feel like they can't, go to gigs. I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat, like it sucks.
It does. So, but thank you for sharing your experience. And what about yourself, Rob? You've been in the underground scene for quite some time with Thrashatouille,
Yeah,
not just as you're a reviewer as well. So
and put gigs on as well. Make it
exactly
make the hat trick.
promoter as well. So yeah. So what's your experience on this?
This is going to be the difficult bit because as part of Thrashatouille, we do encourage the flailing about in certain songs.
Well,
So we did.
this is the thing though. No one wants to go, for a band's perspective. No one wants to go to a gig and the entire crowd's just this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You with
So
us?
yes, we worked on a basis. We were playing at Birmingham, which is a fantastic festival to check out, definitely. And we had a real mix of a crowd. So we had kids in the crowd, we had older adults, and then we had guys, lasses, a bit of everything. So we'd worked our set that certain songs we were going to say, right, if you don't want to be a part of this bit, stand back, and those that do want to flail their arms, well, go for it. And it worked really well. And then at the same time, we had other ones which were just, this is a push pit, this is a kids only pit, etc. Just to make sure that there was a bit for everyone and no one felt left out. I've been to gigs, which I know one of the scenes which has a lot of the throwing yourself at the crowd, the beatdown scene is definitely one of the scenes which is rife for it. And I get it. That's the style that they're going for. That's the image that they're going for. Me personally, I know that that's the case. I wouldn't go to it. I don't have the luxury of being a big lad. I'm a small lad. I can't reach the top shelf in Tesco. So if someone jumps in the crowd, they're going straight over me like a hurdle, or probably clotheslining me. So yeah, I tend to stand back. And we had took the guitarist in Thrashatouille. We went to a gig in Preston. Now the guitarist is blind, so it makes it a little bit more difficult, as you were saying about disabilities, because I was watching the crowd trying to keep an eye on him, and then just out of the blue, someone just came around and just punched everyone. And it's like, no, done, I'm out. But in hindsight, I didn't know that genre then. Now I know about it.
Yeah.
And I want to enjoy it. I will stand further back. I'll stand at the bar or something like that. And I feel a bit safer there. Personally, I prefer to be sort of stood at the back or to the side, out the way. Just as long as I can see. I've got a little box and everything, but yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the style of music that they're doing. I'm not a big fan of this just go and punch people like King 810 did. I have seen them in Manchester, and yeah, it was violent, but that wasn't them encouraging it. It was the crowd being the crowd. Yeah. I also haven't seen this not picking up. That's a new one for me.
Yeah, it's well, like I'd say, it depends on the crowds, I suppose.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But from my experience back, like I say, back in 09, I mean the download festival as well. People are on all kinds of alcohol, illicit substances, blah blah blah. Do you know what I mean? So they're probably not in the right frame of mind when they enter some of these pits as well, which probably doesn't help.
Man, when I was at Damnation, there was this lad. We were obviously with a bunch of people who were helping people crowd surf, and there was this one lad, and at the end he comes up to me and he's like hugging me, and I'm like, he's fucked, his eyes are all over the place, and I'm like, man, can you just go and have some water or something, or just like whatever, because he dropped his phone, and that was it. I found a phone on the floor, and I was like, whose phone is this? And he came over and I gave it to him, and I was like, you're all right, and he was clearly like, not having he was having a good time, but like he was setting himself up to not have a good time. And I said to his friends, like, come on, look after this guy, I don't want to sound so boring, but like, yeah, you're right. Like, you do get people going into the pit that probably aren't in the frame of mind to go in the pit, if they're drunk, like really drunk, and potentially if they've had a bad day, a lot of people might use that as an excuse to take their anger out on people, which is awful. You know what I mean? Substances will always, make people act irrationally. And if they've got bad stuff going on beforehand, it's like crap. But it sucks. And it sucks, Rob, that you feel like you don't want to go near it, and almost it sounds like you've accepted it. You know what I mean? That you just stand at the bar, or you stand away. Yeah, which sucks, man. Like, you should be able to stand wherever you want. And guaranteed there will be a pit. But I feel that people should be able to stand where they want at a gig, regardless of their body type. You know what I mean? Like, people should stand wherever, and it's difficult because, as you say, some genres are more susceptible to different kinds of action than others. But I also feel like a lot of it is bleeding over. You're seeing like beat down and that sort of behavior at what would traditionally just be like a circular push pit sort of gig. And often people that are doing that are putting themselves at a disadvantage, because you do get a lot of people, the crowd killers, you know what I mean? People that will go after them. And it's just a perfect storm for people
to... It's a vicious cycle, though.
Yeah, it is a vicious cycle. Yeah, people just end up battering each other, and that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
A mosh pit isn't a fight.
Exactly.
This is it. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I think we're all on agreement on that. So let's take it over to Grant, because Grant's had some He's got a wealth of experience, playing in many bands over the years, performing live on top of that as well. I imagine you've seen some pretty scary sights, but as well as some, as you tagged me on Facebook quite recently before we did this, about your son's experience. So share your story, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I want to validate a lot of the points that have been brought up so far as well, because what's been mentioned about the like kind of the subsection of metal and stuff bleeding over from other scenes, and the substance abuse thing, I think is quite valid. Now I'll circle back round onto that a little bit after I've finished talking, but yeah. So what I'd mentioned in the Facebook post was in relation to the suffocation gig that I took my son to last week. I've got it in front of us, actually. I'll read it out verbatim. It was to the guy who knocked my son flat on his ass in the pit last night. Thank you. My son was 15 at this point. Obviously, I'm not thanking you for sending my son skidding out of the pit on his face, but what I am thankful for is for you picking him up, putting your arm around him, making sure he was okay, and shaking his hand. The rules of the mosh should be the rules to life. If you see somebody fall, pick them up. If you knock somebody down, take ownership for your actions. And if you just hurt people, expect fucking consequences. And that is the way that mosh pits always were when I was younger. You know, you mentioned, pit killers. I think the last time I encountered anybody like that was probably the last time Carcass played in Newcastle. And, Carcass, they've been kicking around since the mid-'80s, you know what I mean? The average age of the clientele was me. I'm 42 years old, you know what I mean? I'm not a young guy. And there was one kid that started with all of this. And I think to a certain degree, there's a selfishness involved with people if they're not willing to fucking know their audience. You know what I mean? If you're the kind of person that wants to mosh like that, and you start jumping around like that, and you're the only person doing it, and everybody else is kind of pushing you to one side and going, "Calm down," then you should calm down. You know what I mean? You've read the crowd wrong. You've read your night wrong. And those that keep doing it, I do think there's a level of kind of selfishness and perhaps even nihilism in there. You know, what you mentioned about the crossing genres and kind of that kind of stuff. There's been a lot of almost kind of feudal nature between metal fans of different genres, with a lot of them kind of tearing each other down. And, this kind of gatekeepery sort of thing. You know, you turn around and say that you like Metallica as a new fan, and there's been a resurgence in name 3 songs. You know, there's a girl walking around in a Nirvana t-shirt, and we've seen the misogyny start to rise in metal a little bit towards women that are adopting kind of alternative culture, possibly from a little bit more of a fashion sense to begin with. And I mean, who the fuck didn't adopt metal like that? My first Pantera t-shirt that I bought when I was 13, I didn't know who Pantera was. I saw a skull with a corkscrew through it, and I thought, that's cool. I want to buy that. You know, it's how everybody gets introduced to it. But whilst I'd like to, sorry, where I was going with that, whilst I'd like to think that the crossovers in genres is what is bringing maybe slightly inappropriate behaviors into mosh pits where it doesn't belong, like, karate in a Carcass pit, windmilling for Daphne and Celeste or whatever it might be. I think there might be a little bit of hostility coming in there as well. And there always has been that kind of, ever since the 90s, and we started to see subgenres happening, which I think we're back on the cusp of another experimental area, the way that we were in the 90s with people crossing boundaries. But you had bands like, Pantera, the sports metal crowd, the precursor to what is probably beatdown metal now. You know what I mean? These are the guys that were playing football. These were guys that were doing sport, whereas beatdown metal now, everybody in there's, they're all wandering around in Under Armour gear and fucking tap out gear. And, they want their fightiness to be part of their music as well. And it's almost like, people like that, the hardcore fans, are turning up to shows where that's not the thing and going, well, we're going to show them who's boss. We're going to show them how we do it at our shows. and that kind of thing. Maybe I'm being a little bit cynical on it, but at the moment, I think there's more hostility in the metal scene than I have ever seen in the 44 years, 43 years, however fucking old I am. That's how old I am. I can't remember how bloody old I am. But yeah, there's a lot of hostility between the genres, between the subsections, between these different little bits of society where everybody wants to carve out their own identity, and there's this one very little thing, and that's not just music. All right, it's happening in politics, it's happening in religion, it's happening with a lot of kind of conspiracy theory thinking as well, where everybody wants their own tiny little pocket of what they are, and nobody else can touch it. And when you shield yourself like that, when you put all those walls around yourself socially, it leads to hostility towards others.
Mm.
I think that's where a lot of it comes from at the moment. There is that people are more hostile towards each other in metal than they ever have been. There isn't the camaraderie there anymore. There is obviously, the Suffocation gig that I mentioned about my son. There's some old school metal kind of camaraderie there. His first gig when I took him to see Possessed, there was very much a pit killer instance. The pit opened up and it was like 15 feet for 3 people. And there's one kid in there, and he starts with all of this. This was my son's first gig. He was 14. I was like, I don't want my 14-year-old son's first gig to be him getting punched in the face off this bloody idiot over here. So as he came barreling over, I used to play rugby. I'm only a little guy, but I'm quite steady on my feet. So I got the guy around the waist and I just kind of, lunged him. And he lunged into a guy who was a big old fella with a big grey beard and a battle jacket on. And he went like that and pushed him to the other side of the pit. And you could see this pissed off fella on the other side of the pit just look at this kid coming towards him and go, here's my chance. And he just went, shook him across the face, broke his nose, put him flat on the floor. But that was, to be honest, that kid deserved it. There'd been like 15 minutes of this idiot running around, giving it this when nobody else wanted any of it. He wasn't listening, he wasn't taking kind of stock of anybody's body language or the way people were behaving towards him and trying to get him to calm down. There'd been plenty of people trying to put their arm around him. He was either off his face or he was a selfish prick. And either one of those, again, the rise in substances, I touched on it briefly because I used to be a bar manager. I used to run a tiny little venue where I used to have problems with pits breaking out. It was an upstairs bar. It was 100 capacity. The place was held together with duct tape and goodwill. Every time we got a big band upstairs, I thought the floor was going to cave in. I put worm rot on up there, for God's sake. You can only imagine how crazy that gig was. But the rise in substances, even back then, I came out of the pub trade in 2013. And the amount of people that were coked out of their skulls on a Friday night where those people in that scene wouldn't have had the problem with drugs that it had. Again, I think that's only got exponentially worse. And much as James, I'm going to, confirm what James said, there's people going into the pits. Yeah, I can't even imagine going into a mosh pit on pills. Like, can you imagine being on a mosh pit on ecstasy? That must be awful. Every time somebody punches you in the face, you're like, oh, that felt so lovely. I want some more. It's like, but, okay, bad example of bad behavior in a mosh pit. Maybe somebody getting naked in a mosh pit. I've done that before, not deliberately, but we mentioned that on the last podcast. But yeah, there's heavy duty stuff out there as well. Everything's heavier duty than we were when we were young. People are going in there absolutely boxed off their tits and they don't know what's appropriate.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, mate. But what's the reason for this this added hostility? Is it like what Jim mentioned before? People are having a shit day at work. People are having a shit time at home with personal problems, and then they're coming to these gigs and they're taking their frustrations out on these people. Is that one of the things, or is it just people just getting tanked up on alcohol and drugs before a gig, or like somebody's just touched on in chat, our good friend Evil Penguin, people are just generic dicks?
I think it would be remiss to say it's one thing or the other. I think it's a mix of things. I think first of it's an education thing. There's just a lot of people who are just young and they're just doing what they're seeing on social media or what other people are doing and they just want to fit in. And I guess that's the group I'm least upset with because as you're saying, Grant, there was that guy at that gig and people were trying to have a word with him and he wasn't listening. Yeah, he's the other end of the spectrum. Like, he can get the fuck, to be honest. But yeah, I think there's some people who are they're just doing the thing that they know. And I think, like, I feel I don't want to be like, like holier than thou or on my high horse, but I almost feel like a responsibility just speak to them. And I think that's better than immediately just going and like launching them across the room or whatever, which which is easier said than done because that can happen quite
Yeah.
easily. I think as well, yeah, like times just get more extreme. People just want to prove themselves, and I guess again with social media, people just want to be the big person, be tough and be hard and get
Yeah.
it on camera.
Yeah.
And drugs come into that as well. And then I don't know, socioeconomically and culturally, we live in tough times, but times have always been kind of tough. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't know. People are more. I don't know. Social capital, as they say, is in decline. People are less groupie and whatever. They're more
Yeah.
individualistic and they're focusing on themselves. And you can definitely see that, as Grant was saying, you get these individuals going in and they're not really thinking about other people. They're just thinking about me, me, me. I've seen it. You get these gigs where everyone's pushed out because there is a pit with like two or three people in it who are going absolutely ham. And it sucks because it's ruining it for everybody else,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Couldn't agree more, man. Couldn't agree more. So we'll pass it over to our brother Pin, who's pretty much been listening to everyone's stories here. What's your experience and what's your thoughts on what everyone's had to say so far?
It's funny you mentioned like trying to prove yourself and stuff, Jim, because like I remember when I first got into like going to gigs properly and things like that, and I was probably like 13, 14-year-old going to gigs by myself. And I got into like a group of people who would like they called themselves the Newcastle Tanks, and they were like gone about just trying to like create the worst pits they possibly could. And I didn't know any better at the time, and I was just like, oh wait, this is how this works. Like you go in and you push people about, you get into fights and whatever. And like it took me a couple of years to realize that like no, like that just destroys the community of it all. And then like as soon as I started distancing myself from that and realizing that like a lot of people are there just to have fun and not to take out any of their own frustrations and whatever's going on in their own life, like you're meant to do that in safe ways, not by lashing out. And like it wasn't until that point where like you look back on it and you're like, wait, I was just following orders really. Like you didn't really think when you first get introduced, you're just like, oh wait, this is what it is. Like, but over the years, you're all right. Like a lot of it's gone from like I remember when, like I say, when I first started getting into pits and stuff, there was always like a designated area, and it was like the pit itself, and then like a couple of rows on the wall. You were like, right, something might happen, but it's probably not gonna, and everyone's here to do the same thing. And then like anywhere else, like very front row, you were safe because you like there was a barrier between you and the pit. If you wanted to stay out the way, you could go at the back, like that sort of thing. It just kind of seems like it is all between genres and between space in the actual crowd, just bleeding together, and everyone's just out to do what they want to do. It's a bit mad.
I mean,
Like from a stage sort of side as well. Like any band that I'm in and any gigs I've played, I've always tried to like, yes, have your fun, and then like same as what Rob does, like during your set, plan bits and be like, right, this is a bit that's coming up. Tell the crowd what's going to happen. People can move to where they want to be. But it's getting harder and harder to do because, like you say, there's always going to be that one or two people who just kind of want to go out their way.
which we have seen, Sean. We've been at gigs together when we've seen it. I've even witnessed your own brother lose his temper with a few people in mosh pits, and he's had to,
Aye.
yeah, your brother's had to be right. I know this guy's been a bit of a dick, but you also we need to calm down a little bit because it's gonna end up in just a brawl at the next point. Do you know what I mean? Um, do you feel people are for this is for everyone? So do you feel people are also going into pits because they feel like they've got a point to prove?
I would say maybe some people like wait, I used to when I first started. So that was my kind of mentality. These big lads who I was with were like bopping people about, and I want to prove I could stand with them.
Yeah.
Like, I remember seeing the Devil Driver at the O2 Academy and leaving that gig with like a broken nose. I can't remember if it was broken up, but it was like all bloody everywhere, and like all my ribs were bruised and that because I'd gotten into a scrap in the middle of like one of the circle pits.
I mean, I'm similar to like what Jim mentioned earlier on. I'm a big dude. I'm not tall, but I'm wide, chunky dude. You know what I mean? And I do generally feel like if some people might just take one look at me, someone who might be quite smaller, he's going to go over. I'm going to make sure he's. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's a point to prove that I'm going to take down the biggest lad in the room. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think always the people are like, premeditating these things, but it does happen in the spur of the moment. It's happened to me. I was at another gig a few months ago and some guy was just off his tits and like just jumped on me and like grabbed me and I was just sort of, like, what the hell? And like I like adjusted my body weight and he fell backwards and I landed with my knee in his dick and balls. So like it worked out bad for him. But at the same time, I felt really bad because I was like, I didn't mean to, smash this guy in his dick and balls, but I did. And that's another thing. Like if you are getting a bit annoyed and you're pushing people away, you can end up looking like the bad dude because you are big. You can look like the troublemaker, and I worry about that. And there have been a couple of times as well where I have just lost my rag and I've just fucking lobbed people because I'm just like, fuck
Yeah,
off.
I've been
I'm
there
here,
before.
I'm here to have a good time and whatever. Yeah.
What do you think, Grant? Bob, do you think people are going in the pits with a point to prove?
Possibly at
You
bigger
go first, man.
gigs. I mean, I tend to go to the smaller gigs now. It's rare I go to sort of like the Devil Drivers, the Carcass gigs, and I don't seem to see any of the going in with a point to prove. It does seem in the underground scene that it's certainly more friendly, but you see, the Malevolence at Bloodstock was a bit of an example where, yeah, I think people are going to gigs with a point to prove. And yeah, I know that a few of my friends who've been absolutely tanked up have gone, oh, there's the big guy, I'm going to take him. This is going back years, by the way. We're not like that now. Don't hate us. But
There's no hate at the end of the day, Rob. It's all love, love and metal at the end of the day. So there's no.
exactly. But I mean, like when I was a kid, it was always a case. It was a push pit. If someone falls, you pick them up, and that's always been that ethos seems to still be there. I think, whether it's still there on the larger scale, yeah. As Grant said, it's reading the room. If you see a gig that is predominantly circle pits, push pits, don't go in swinging your fists. If there is a load of people swinging their fists, don't go in thinking that it's going to be a push pit because it's just going to end up badly for either way. I could throw a horrible question and just go, so whose responsibility, if it is getting rowdy, is that the band or is that the audience?
This is that is a fantastic question. This is the thing you see. I mean, a band's got a better field of view where they can see things what the crowd cannot. So use an example. For example, so I spoke with Ricky from Suffocation about mosh pit etiquette before this, and he had informed me that he was dealing a gig in China, and he had to stop a gig because someone in the mosh pit ran up to another dude and just full blown headbutted him.
Wow.
Full blown, just full on headbutt. That's not obviously mosh pit etiquette straight there. Do you know what I mean? So that's not cool. Ricky stops the gig immediately and he throws him out. Respect for Ricky for doing that. So at times, I would say if because the band's got a better field of view, especially on the bigger stages, they've got a better field of view where they can see stuff maybe kicking off in a mosh pit. If the band can see it before it's happening, yeah, maybe put the band on like stop it sort of thing. Um, I would say if a band doesn't see it, I would feel that people in the maybe communicate with each other. People in a mosh pit should really communicate with each other, in my opinion. So it's a bit of a tough one, Rob. I'm not going to lie. Anyone
I'll
else?
jump in on this one.
Go for it, Grant. Go for it.
Yeah, because it was one of the bits that I actually kind of had made a mental note to talk about. I'm so glad that Rob's brought it up because I think in relation to not just the band's responsibility, but the band's influence over the fans and what they're willing to see and what they're willing to put up with in music is one of the last areas that bands have got where they can truly create infamy. You know, Stevie knows I've done interviews and what have you as well, and I interviewed somebody a couple of months back, and I'd said to them, "Do you think that the era in which bands are able to shock and create their infamy, the way that Kiss did, the way that Alice Cooper did, the way that Marilyn Manson did, the way that Deicide did, they were able to do that in our youth because not everybody in the world had an HD video camera in their pocket. So the days of getting coverage of Marilyn Manson puts a cage full of puppies into the crowd for the, people to tear to bits, which was a legitimate kind of weird tabloid story that we got in the mid to late 90s around the same time that Smells Like Teen Spirit, Smells Like Children came out. And obviously he wasn't lowering puppies into the crowd, you know what I mean? But bands can't even kind of hinge any of their marketing on that mystique and that kind of air of absolute despicable behavior, because you can't have like rumors like that circulating anymore. So the ability to instill violence in the crowd and the ability to have people fearful to come and see them, it's no longer about what they might see coming off the stage, what they might have coming off the antics. The one area they've got left to be able to go, we are the most extreme, is how the fans are going to behave. It's kind of hark back to Gigi Allen days, bits of broken glass and shit getting flung around and all of that kind of stuff. I really do think in the next 4 or 5 years we are going to see bands up the game in relation to the level of violence that they're instilling in the crowds, simply to be able to go, we're the most feared band on the planet. Our pits are worse than anybody else's. Only come if you dare. And then we get the proving ground situation that we've just mentioned there before. People are going around simply to prove a point because they want to be in the most violent mosh pit, the most fucked up environment, the most broken noses, the most black eyes, that kind of thing. Like, say, right back round, because I know I can ramble and I can go off on weird little tangents.
Fire on it, go for it.
I do think that the band's influence and the band's responsibility as to what's happening in the crowd is absolutely paramount. I've been at gigs where bands have stopped because there's a barrier given way. I think it was Leeds 2003, when System of a Down had to stop mid-set because the barriers collapsed at the front and what have you, and they, stopped everything and got it up. But I don't know, there's a new era of bands coming through that I think would prefer to see somebody die in the crowd and live from that infamy than look out for the crowds. And I think that's a very, very worrying precedence that's getting set in the mentality of some of the artists.
What's your thoughts on that, Rob?
I think he's hit the nail on the head there, really, hasn't he?
You pretty much, yeah. You just bashed it, really, didn't you?
Yeah.
What were you going to say there, Jim? Sorry.
I was going to say that's a really cool perspective. Like, and I think it's happening across so many things. Like the ability to shock and to, cause people to go, oh my God, diminishes more and more every day. We become more connected. It takes away novelty. It takes away being surprised by stuff that you'll only see once in a while. And as you say, when that happens, violence becomes normalized. And hell yeah, like we do live in a society, I think, where violence and some strange stuff is like way more normal than it was when I was growing up. Again, I'd loathe to sound like an old git, but I think you've like hit the nail on the head. But going back, just my opinion on the whole responsibility thing, I reckon, yeah, and it goes into what Grant was saying. I think the bands have got to be mindful. I think it's shared though. I think it's understanding that you're part of a community, and that means it's the bands, the people who are making the music, have a responsibility, but also people who engage in it, because I think you're more likely to tackle the problem if you've got more buy-in. If it's not just the band or one guy in the crowd or whatever. I think, as you said yourself, Stevie, is like communication. I think that's one of the craziest things about the world nowadays, and it ties into what Grant was saying. In a world where we have the most opportunities we've ever had to communicate with each other, we've never been so disconnected. and it's the same in gigs, man. Like you're getting all this crazy shit happening in pits, and people, yeah, like you talk to people, and I've tried doing that in pits before, but it's not just with the people who are the problem. It can be perhaps, you know, speaking to the other people in the pit, just so everyone's aware, because the more people are aware that something's going on, that you may be likely to reduce harm. I don't know. It's difficult without like trying to, because you don't want to ruin the fun of like live music or anything like that. But at the
It's a
same time,
catch-22, isn't it? Because this is what
yeah,
I said just before Rob giving you his story was you don't want, from a band's perspective, you don't want to go to a gig and everyone's just standing still. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's just it's not on.
yeah,
You want a bit of interaction, you want a bit of movement, but at the same time, you want people to be safe. You want people to enjoy
yeah.
themselves. Do you, brothers? So it's kind of a
But
where's the balance?
yeah, I think one of the most important things about metal is like obviously the music's important, but again, it's for me, I love it because of that community, that sense of purpose that it gives me, the sense of belonging, that I've struggled for my whole life, feeling like alienated.
As
And
Grant said, the camaraderie, the brotherhood
yeah,
sort of thing. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean?
when I go to a festival, when I go to Bloodstock, it feels like I'm home. When I go to Damnation, it feels like I'm home. It feels like I'm around people who share ideals and values and stuff like that. And I think, perhaps if someone's acting irrationally, perhaps they don't feel part of it. And I don't know, maybe we need to, I don't know, look at how we make people feel more involved. But again, I don't want to make this a job for anyone, even myself. You don't want to go to a gig and think, well, I'm at a gig now and my responsibility is to do this. When I go to a gig, or when anyone wants to go to a gig, they just want to have a good time. But I guess entering into any community comes with some degree of, I don't know, responsibility without getting too philosophical about it.
Hmm. Little message that's just come from our friend Jedbo. He seems to think that part of the problem is younger metal fans trying to find their identity and make metal their own to stand out from what's come before. Takes on what Jedbo's got to say.
I mean, I mentioned it briefly there before that I thought we're heading into a transitional period. Again, I think he's got a point. Again, talking as an old man, but we are all quite aged men here. We're all about the age that remember that time from about 92 through to about 98 when we saw all of the genre crossover happening in huge abundance. Bands like Faith No More coming out of the late 80s with rap and metal, bands like the Chili Peppers coming out with funk and metal, the evolution into kind of new metal and what have you on the West Coast. But we also saw that happen a lot on the East Coast of America as well, with hardcore and metal blending together, bands like Biohazard, bands like Hatebreed coming through that brought the windmill into metal, so to speak. Much the same way as the West Coast brought a lot more kind of, like the hip hop culture and what have you, in a far more kind of almost shoegazy kind of thing going on in the way that bands were interacting. Yeah, I see that happening again with the way that genres are bleeding into each other, and we're seeing the culture from now a more divided metal community. I mean, if in 1995, 96, if somebody said, "What kind of black metal do you like?" You just go, "What, like Emperor and Mayhem and like black metal, dude?" It wouldn't be depressing, suicidal black metal and the evil Finnish death metal and NSBM. Fuck those guys, by the way. But again, everything's become so much more subsection that everybody's got their own little thing that they do that nobody else does, and then you see that come into where you get genre fusion and where you get crowd fusion, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, these guys are playing Foo Fighters covers, and there's a guy over here doing the crab thing that it's like people doing stuff outside of the normal area. Maybe not necessarily from a malicious perspective, but I mean, I know I've just said that. I do think it's a malicious perspective in some circumstances, but yeah, the kids don't know what identity they have because we're hitting a point of musical genre transition. Again, nobody wants to be defined. Everybody wants to go, right, I'm going to fuse this and that and this and that and this and that and this and that. I don't know, I've kind of gone off on one here
It's
a little
quite
bit.
well.
I
I
agree
mean,
with him though. That's
yeah,
what I mean.
yeah. Well, we're kind of getting more into genres there as to the mosh pits itself. But I hear what you're saying, because
Yes.
obviously because the genres are mixing, it's mixing the crowds on top of that as well with us. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're not just getting one specific set of fans. You're getting like sort of like thrashcore, for example. You're getting the core fans as well. You're getting the thrash fans all in one, and then obviously the core fans want to go maybe start doing the spin kicks and the windmill, and the thrash fans, well, going on here, this is a bit too much. You know what I mean? What happened just to a standard, push and shove sort of thing? Circle pits, maybe it's even a wall of death. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
you put that on a bill with a band that, you said thrashcore, and then you put that on a bill with somebody that's doing a different kind of fusion, and you've gone from having two sets of fans to having four sets of fans. You put a third bill on that, and all of a sudden you've got six different sets of fans, as opposed to what would previously have been three, because you've got them, like I say, taken from all of these different areas that bringing people in from other little subsections and the way that they do things in a crowd.
so really, what can we do? Because we need, like I say, we want gigs to be safe. We don't want that, what you've just said before there, where it's going to get to a point where fans are going to, we are the most dangerous band, blah blah blah. You come if you dare, sort of thing. We don't want that. Well, I personally don't. Anyway, I don't know about anybody else. No, I think we're going to all agree on that one. Nobody wants that. So how can we do that? How can we get people to stay safe at these gigs?
I've seen a couple of venues start to put signs up, so there's no like windmills and pits. There's another venue I've seen which now has no crowd surfing. I wouldn't want that to be the way forward, is physically being told, no, I can't do this, because that kind of defeats the object of it. It's just the reading the room, going back to it again. But I like, when I put on gigs, we tend to mix the genres, and I really like mixing the genres, because we had a fantastic doom band, for example, on Friday, with a sort of modern metal and then a core band. So we had three completely different genres. And people were sort of going, I'd never really listened to Doom. I really enjoyed it. And they had a couple of the Doom fans in going, do you know what? I don't normally like core, but that was really good. I might go and check some more out. So I wouldn't want to then stick everything going, oh, I don't want to add this one in or whatever. I still quite like the bringing the influences from everywhere else. I don't know what you can do.
Yeah,
is where I was getting at.
I mean, glad you touched on the signs about going into venues now, and they've got signs up about how no circle, or sorry, no windmilling or crowd surfing, etc. Do you feel that could trigger people as well? Maybe it's a bit of a rebellion in people, and they're going into the gigs, doing the whole Rage Against Machines, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me sort of thing, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to crowd surf. I'm going to do the windmill, not because that fucking sign tells me not to. I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? So it could be a bit of a rebellion aspect. Do you think?
As a band, yeah, I would also like. I've seen I love to have a crowd surfer when we're playing. We've had it for every gig in 7 years, every single one. If I see a venue with that on, I'm going to have a crowd surfer anyway. It's not going to make any difference. And because I've just put myself in that mentality, if I was going in as a crowd, I would probably do the same. Been told not to. Oh, that's naughty. Let's do it. It's that do not press this button.
But that's pretty much been metal since its inception. Let's be honest here. Rebellion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Stick it to the man sort of thing. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. That's pretty much been metal since day one, which I'm sure we can all agree on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think we're not in a crisis here. We are in a transitional state. I completely agree with Grant. But I think on the other side of that, as Rob was just saying, there's some wicked things about like the blending of genres and some of these barriers dissolve. I love going to gigs and seeing people from different backgrounds, different tastes in bands. It's helped me grow my taste in music, and it's just cool to meet people with like different tastes and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. So I don't think I don't want to like get people panicking about this. And we don't want like a moral panic to come out of this, but like I think it's just a case of just things like this, man. Like having just conversations about it, talking about it, Communication. I think Steve, you like hit the nail on the head, man. It's just communication. Communication outside of gigs. Bands talking about it every once in a while. People talking about it with their friends. I guess the hardest thing for me is, like a lot of people in the chat in this conversation have pointed out that, it's younger people coming into the scene, and I guess we've all been there. We've all wanted to be, the one that's moshing the hardest and banging their head the hardest. And I think we also don't want to run the risk of like alienating young people and making them feel like we hate them because I don't think any of us do. We want them to come to gigs and they're the next generation and all that bollocks. But like, I just think it's just like looking out for each other and investing in it as a community rather than just like a throwaway thing that you do. It's like, if you really love metal and you really love it, yeah, work on that community aspect of it. And that's why I love like hardcore, because that a lot of that is about community and bettering yourself and other people. So I think that we just got to try and like be nice about it.
This is why I think I've particularly fallen in love with the underground scene, because the underground scene, that is pretty much what the entire scene is about. Keyword right there, community.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always I've loved metal since the day I can remember, but the underground scene, I could say I would pretty much say I can get in it since pretty much doing the Get Heavy stuff, meeting Sean, and through that I have just met just an absolute wave of amount of amazing people. Everyone on this panel right now, for example, people watching live who I've met in person, whether in person or just chatting in general, online. So the community aspect is what I adore the most. I've always enjoyed the metal scene because, like I just said, it's a brotherhood, big one massive family. That's what I absolutely love about it. But Sean, you've been you've been quiet. You've been keeping an eye on the chat for us. I've noticed. Thank you very much. But any other thoughts? Any thoughts on how we can tackle this, or maybe create a balance? Because that's kind of what we need in it, where we're going.
Balance is the word I was going to go with. I was going to say the scale kind of swings both ways. So like, I think the message went like, especially at a live show, I think the message should come from the band. So like, whenever Tefra would play shows, would do like, make sure you're looking after each other, like open the pit, but make sure everyone's safe, this, that, and the other. But I think the message goes out from the band, but then it's down to the people in the crowd to also take on like Jim was saying, like everyone needs to have that little bit of responsibility, but like it shouldn't come down to like one big guy in the crowd or one like big lass in the crowd or whatever to like take on that like protect their role. It should be a case of like as an individual you look after the collective because like you say it should all be about community. We like the end of the day everyone goes to a gig for like their own reason of escape or insight like enjoyment or excitement. Like for a lot of people that is the be all and end all of life, you know what I mean? Like I know that's why I'm in it. Like I was in a lot of dark times when I first started writing music and I've not turned back because it keeps me out of them. And I think a lot of other people feel the same way. That's what it should all be about really.
So yourself, much like Rob, you're in a band, promoter on top of that, you're reviewing on top of that as well. Now we can add podcaster to that list of accolades. Who do you think is responsible? Because Rob, he's asked an amazing question. Who's responsible for keeping, like, who's policing this sort of thing? Is it the band? Is it the crowd? Or is it the venue? Or even the promoter? You know what I mean? Who's responsible? What's your
I
thoughts on
think
that?
honestly, it's all of the above.
I was just going to say that.
It's all of the above. It's like a 25% for everybody. The band, like you say, have a good overall view, especially like so if anything's going on, the band sees that, say the venue doesn't see or the crowd doesn't see, you can be like, right, pack in, calm that down, or that person needs help, help that person. Then, I mean, at the same time, if you're on the wall of the pit, then like you can look in. If someone gets out, you can drag them up, drag them out, make sure they're okay. It's down to everybody. Like I don't
Yeah.
think there's any one group, and I don't think it'll work if it's put on any one group's shoulders. It needs to be, and everybody chips in, or at least the majority chips in. so that the minority don't cause too much.
This is it. This is it. Definitely. Because there's a lot of young people that go to these gigs, and we want them to keep continuing and come back to these gigs. Because they go to the gigs for the very first time, and then they experience that, and then not going to gigs, so that's what's happening. Do you know what I mean? And then then we've got no live scene anymore.
The first ever gig I took Reese to was Slipknot at the arena. And I remember getting barrier for that because I wanted it to be the best experience I could have. But I spent the whole time with them on the barrier and me with like an arm on either side, making sure they didn't get hurt. And we had this like one drunk bloke who kept trying to push them out the way so they could get barrier. And it got to a point where I was like, mate, like you need to pack in, otherwise it's gonna escalate, and I don't want that to happen. And he ended up getting chucked out by someone else, but like, yeah, it's.
I mean,
you need to protect the next generation, but then they also need to come in understanding what's going on and not being guided the wrong way.
Bios is currently in the chat. She touched on briefly every time I die. She hasn't been into at the front of a gig since that moment because crowd servers came over and it floored her. Do you know what I mean? Just the amount of squashed. As soon as every time I die came on stage, everyone rushed forward. If you're at the front of the barrier, you were against the barrier, and you've got a metal bar just across your chest here, just crushing you. So it was literally the case of I'm having to like move backwards while she's they're just trying to. Some people moved help, but some people just pushing it the way. Yeah, but yeah. So really, top and bottom of it is look after each other, please. Anyone who is going into a mosh pit, and key work from Evil Penguin, don't be a dick. I think we can all be in agreement on that statement right there. Just don't be. And leave egos at the door, I would say.
I think we should adopt some malicious compliance as well. You mentioned briefly before about bands like genuinely inciting violence. I'm not talking about like what Rob mentioned, being considerate and going, this is our next song, get up and do this. The band you mentioned before going like drag people into the pit, punch everybody and what have you. A little bit of malicious compliance from the crowd where if there's a band out there doing that, and just go, all right, mate, we'll start with you. You want to incite some violence? All right, we'll jump up, we'll bray you for 15 minutes, and then we'll get down and we'll kick the crap out of each other. How does that sound? Yeah. And maybe there might be a little bit less inclination just to incite people to indiscriminately hurt each other.
Think twice before the incited sort of thing.
Yeah. The human race is already indiscriminately hurting each other, you know what I mean? We don't need any of that in our music as well.
No, couldn't agree more, mate. Could be an option. Should we try it? What gigs people got next? If anyone is
playing Trillions tomorrow.
You're playing Trillions tomorrow. There we go. Right. So if anyone sees Sean Payne on stage inciting violence, start with Sean Payne.
I'll be there.
Take his bass off him.
Yeah.
And then just throw him in the pit and see how he likes it.
To be fair, I played Head of Steam once, and the crowd was that packed, and it was such a small room that I was genuinely playing songs when I was dodging, like swinging.
Yeah. I hope you've been taking notes, Sean, for your gig tomorrow.
Aye, definitely have.
I hope this isn't just all going to go out the window and you're just going to start a riot and get much.
First thing I'm going to see tomorrow is just violence, mate. Just.
Right, so Sean Payne's cancelled, everybody. Move along. Anyone got any other thoughts on Mosh Pit etiquette, guys? Or anybody in chat who's watching live at this present moment? What's your thoughts, experience, please? We're very interested in hearing your takes on it, because like I say, everyone's got a lot of opinions on it. I would definitely say to anyone who is going into mosh pits as well, know your limits, because we've all got our own limits. And
I think, what you mentioned there before is a little bit relevant on how we should all be taking responsibility, dude. Because one thing that you mentioned there about the lassie getting pushed at the front of the pit to the point where her chest was getting crushed and what have you. Again, I keep talking back about my childhood and what have you, but we come from a country where football is our biggest sport, and we know what happened in the late 80s and early 90s in relation to crowd crushers at football matches. The last thing we want is to perpetuate a mentality where that starts to happen within live music as well, because then we are looking at all-seater gigs. Obviously, the tragedy of what could happen to somebody in those circumstances goes without saying, but the broader knock-on effect that it would have to live music as a whole if they went, right, we can't have these crushers anymore, we can't have the crowd self-governing themselves in relation to how they look out for each other, no more standing room only gigs, the same way that they did with football terraces off the back of certain disasters, worst case scenario. But if people don't start looking out for each other, that is potentially where live music ends up as well. And God, no, I don't ever want to see that.
Yeah,
Couldn't
I
agree
think
more.
that's a big one. Like thinking what you have to lose,
Mhm.
because yeah, as you say, like that, we're talking about all this stuff here and not wanting to ruin it, but if
I
something were
mean,
to happen like that, government could come in, authorities could come in, venues could come in. You might see that insurers have refused to insure venues that are putting on metal shows or whatever. All these things, and yeah, that's like chaos theory almost, but it's very possible.
yeah,
There is that
you,
there is
you
that
you
concern.
touched on like obviously the football being like the biggest sport. I know it's like obviously could hooliganism like back in the old football days in the firms. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause like I said, more people are touching crossing over into the hardcore scene. Could people who love that football hooliganism type stuff be coming into it? Because I've seen people come into mosh pits and I feel like they shouldn't even be in this scene. Does that make sense? So, for example, myself and Kearns Rosa, who was a moderator for this channel, we were at a Metal to the Master show. I believe it was on the weekend, and a stag party came in the Trillions Rock Bar in Newcastle, and they didn't even have a clue of any of the bands on the stage. They didn't even know who's even playing right now. Off their face, obviously, because the stag party, of course. But they literally they were bringing glass bottles into the mosh pit. Glass bottles were smashing on the ground, and they were still pushing and shoving. A couple of people were swinging arms, and it was getting to the point where I could see Kearns is ready to flip his lid. I'm ready to flip my lid as well. And there's a couple of young, like Jim said before, you feel like because you are the bigger person, that you feel like you've got to protect people around you. So you've got to. We kind of stepped in front of these younger lasses that were in front, just because like trying to push everyone out the way so we can get this glass off the floor as well. And I just remember like one of them I have no idea what this music is. Do you know what I mean? So could that aspect of people who just love to fight just be coming into the pit for the sake of having a fight?
That I've seen that happen, man. I've seen like groups of people, like lads, coming into gigs when it's like a free entry or they're just looking for something to do. And I've seen it happen where they're causing trouble or they'll go into a pit and they might get shoved a little bit and then they'll start thinking everyone's trying to fight them. I think that's a bit of a slightly different issue. I think it's tough. But then you do get people on the other hand who are into the music and everything, who are going to gigs to take out their frustration in a negative way. And it's just like, man, go go to a boxing gym, go work a bag, for a bit. Don't punch people in a pit because I'm up for the roughest pits you can do, providing your arms are tucked. When you see people like swinging and lunging and going full extension at a gig that doesn't really call for it, it's just like, man, you're angry. I get it. There's lots of reasons to be angry. Don't take it out on these people that are having a good time. Go to a boxing gym. Uh, you know, it's difficult. It's difficult. I think on the other hand, with the people that shouldn't be, the people that are just turning up and they don't know what they're doing, I think it's a tough one because you can't like stop people from coming in just because they're like wearing different stuff because they might actually be into it. And I've also seen occasions where people wander into gigs, who don't know what's going on, and they end up loving it, and they end up buying merch, and they end up buying pints, and they end up like chatting to the bands. That's like quality when that happens. I guess it's up to the venues, man, just to monitor people like that. That come. If someone's coming in that doesn't really look like they fit in, maybe keep an eye on them. But it's
Yeah.
it's difficult.
We work on one when we're putting on a gig. We're not a free entry, which does create that barrier from people just wanting to go in for a fight. But anyone who does turn up going, oh, yeah, I don't mind it. I always tell them it is heavy metal, it is loud, and a lot of them just go, oh no, I'm not paying that just to go for a fight. And then immediately I've known, well, that's fine because you're not coming in after that because you've just told me what you're going to do. And then you get on the other side, as you say, people just go, do you know what? Yeah, we had I think there was two older guys came in on Friday and never listened to metal and really loved it. And again, they were talking to all the bands. So yeah, I wouldn't want to put a judge on it. But yeah, it's open it to anyone. But at the same time, if there's someone new, if you can tell they're new, and there's one person being a dick, just go, yeah, don't be like that guy.
Yeah. Pull them to one side, have a word with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If needed, that's kind of what we try to create down here. It's only a small venue anyway, so you wouldn't really get too much of the, I'm going to throw my fist over everyone because, it's a 100-cap venue, it's tiny. But at the same time, if there was a band that it fits with and the crowd is doing that, the crowd are doing that. I mean, I do it a little bit. I do throw my arms around a tad.
I mean, sometimes it can't be helped, can it?
No. I mean, I quite like that.
It's a balancing thing as well, because if you lose your balance, what's the first thing that happens? You throw your arms up, innit?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If you feel like you're losing your balance or your footing, first thing you do.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the dancing side of it, with your arms going there, whenever I'm doing it, I'm always very aware of who's around me. So if there's a big space, if there's no one in the pit and there's just a bit of a space and there's one other person doing it or there's just me, I'm not harming anyone doing that. I'm having a good time. I have had people come up to me. I'll give an example of it. I was at Hammerfest. There's a horrible name to throw out, but anyway, I was at a Hammerfest event years ago, and I was right at the back of the venue where there was loads of chairs. There was no one sat near me at all. It's just our group, and I was just having a bit of a vibe to a band that you probably wouldn't normally throw down to, as people would say. But I was out of the way. There was no one there was no need for anyone to bother me. This guy comes up to me and sort of properly starts on me, just like, you can't do that here. And I was like, why? Who am I hurting? The only person that this is bothering is you. And so again, it's both sides. If someone is doing that, but they're doing it in a controlled and respectful manner, go for it. The very same reason that you can have these push pits, and I've been in on the other side where I've just been stood not quite on the edge of a pit, but a little bit back, and I've been dragged into pits. I don't want to go in a pit. So it's collectively, as everyone's been saying, it's just being aware of the people around you, what other people are doing, and letting other people have fun, but not letting them take it too far, I think, as well.
Yeah, definitely. You hit the nail on the coffin there. So, guys, right, so I want 5 pieces of advice from each person for anyone who is wanting to go in. Yes, Sean, I'm putting you all on the spot from each person. What do you think? If you got to give 5 pieces of advice to anyone new to a mosh pit, what? Start with you, Sean. Go around the room.
Bullying us. I'm not good at the spot. Probably read the room, see what kind of pit it is.
Good one, yeah.
Watch it before you go in, see what people are doing. Don't wear like anything spiky or clingy because you might catch someone. I know I got my lip ring caught out once. It got tore out because someone was wearing one of them spike bracelets in the pit.
Damn.
In a Trivium show years ago. The rules of the pit, like we always say,
Yes.
Always pick people up. If you fall, you'd want someone to pick you up. Struggling.
It's quite alright, mate. If you want to, we can pass over to Grant. You've got 5. I can think
I
of.
don't know about 5.
Right,
I'll
if you
go
haven't
back to
got just any advice, we'll not say 5, but if you can give any advice to anybody.
I'll go back to my previous interview with you, mate. Don't wear cheap Primark combat pants with no underwear in a mosh pit. Otherwise, you've got a whole
Safety
different
shorts.
kind of
There you go.
etiquette that
There's
you've
a
got
4.
to try and establish excuses and reasons for. There's
That is key
nobody
advice,
wants to have a
everyone.
scroll and
Make
flashing at them.
sure you are wearing something underneath your combat shorts, because
Yeah.
if they do split, you never want to see an old man's sack hanging out.
Absolutely. You got Death Clock to blame for that one. I was the kind of guy that
Can't
probably
blame the
wore
band on that one,
underwear
mate.
about
That's all you.
30% of the
You
time.
should have worn
Of
the
course I can,
boxers
man.
underneath.
That episode came out of Murderface with all of his free ball and thing and him not wearing underwear, and I was just like, well, I'm already a massive bass playing stereotype here. Here I go a step further. And yeah.
I feel like that is
Wear underwear in the pit.
definitely,
Wear underwear, definitely.
definitely in the top. Everyone, please wear underwear underneath your, your garments, please, because you don't, like I say, you don't want to see.
Please wear clothes, just in general, in the pit. You know, I can't. There's too many times I've been in pits and there's just
Well,
been
hold on.
someone
Where's this gone,
at
Rob? I've been in so many
nothing at
pits.
all. I've never done it, but yeah, it does. It happens at festivals, doesn't it? Someone's just going to go in with absolutely fuck all on, and you're like, why? I don't want to see, your turkey neck dangling. It's just no.
It's the worst feeling when like someone's shirtless as well and they like brush up against you and it's just sweat.
Oh,
And it's just like, oh no.
It's when someone's got Y fronts on and then they start crowd surfing. No.
Simply cannot control myself around all of these topless men.
Oh no, I'm getting
The same
horrible.
goes for girls as well. Sometimes they don't really want to get hit in the face with a tit or something like that. Make sure you're well supported. No nip slips.
Yes, so
Disagree.
I
I thought you were
I'll
going to
have
say women don't want to get.
That's
They
it.
don't want to see a big bloke with no shirt on with his ass crack out in their face. I've seen that.
A comment from Treacle Truffle in the live chat. Old man sack hanging sounds quite festive.
It's perfect time of year.
It
Is
is.
that a boy or a girl? Either way, I'll happily come up their chimney. I'm not
Ah,
pussy.
well, this is took a sharp turn for the worse.
I'll
Hey,
be
we
quiet
lasted
now.
an hour and 20 minutes.
Hey, we did well. We did well. We did well, I thought, Sean. And Jim trying to move swiftly on.
Five tips. One, personal hygiene. Please have a wash or put some deodorant on before you go into a pit. And on the flip side, don't put too much on because I don't want to be suffocated by fumes. Especially when I'm in my older age, grasping for breath. You take a big
Put
deep
deodorant on
whiff
outside.
of...
Outside the venue, not in the middle of the pit and just gas everyone and kill everyone with asthma.
Exactly. Yeah,
No.
that's it. That's it. I don't want to be breathing and coughing to death. So mind your hygiene. Please, unless you've got like a reason for it. Don't take a drink into a pit and get upset if someone like knocks it because it's gonna happen. If you take a drink into a pit. Also, if you're at a fucking venue like that's got a certain type of floor or any kind of floor really, the drink on the floor is going to make it a lot more dangerous. So try not to take drinks like into the pit. If you're going into the pit, you just see people like running into a pit, clutching 2 beers, and you're like, oh man, it's going to be some severe water damage coming on here.
Fight for my life the other night at the Riverside, wasn't it, Stevie?
It was I think
A couple of rows away from the pit, just holding my pint like this.
yeah. I mean, it's £9 a pint as well. You got to remember that.
Well, that's the thing. You see booze flying all over the place. It's like people throwing money all over the place.
The thing is, I think I had half of Sean's pint down the back. People in the pit in front of us, and the next thing I know, just covered in beer. Ain't me.
Yeah. I guess like the next point flowing from that is like try not to take things personally. Like if someone does bump you or or splash you or whatever, they probably didn't do it on purpose. So don't get too raging with them. Flowing on to the next point, which is communication. If you're unhappy with someone, try and deal with it nicely first. Have a word, and you know, try not to make them feel like you're having a go at them. Show that you're doing it out of love. And that's cheesy as shit, but like you're doing it because you want them to have fun as well. And I guess like lastly, don't forget to have fun. Like we're all at gigs to have fun and enjoy ourselves. Like, and I need to remember that sometimes. When I'm ranting, it's like I'm doing this because it's my hobby, it's my passion. I've got a job that stresses me out enough. I'm here to enjoy it and have fun, and if you're so inclined, make sure people around you are in a safe environment can have fun as well.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more. Well, mine, I would say avoid aggression if you can. Because you want to go into make sure you're in the right frame of mind. Because if you're going in a pit if you're already angry before you go in the pit, you're just going to lose your rag, even especially getting pushed about and stuff. Definitely leave egos at the door. It's not about showing off. Participate in the enjoyment and of the music, the atmosphere. There's nothing to prove to anybody else in the pit. Know when to walk away. If the vibe turns hostile or unsafe, don't hesitate. Leave the pit. Your safety is more important than staying in the action. Like Rob's touched on. Stand at the back. There's nothing wrong with standing at the back. Having a little headbang from time to time as well. Which is what we've touched on quite a bit, which the communication. You want to dive in a pit, engage in activity. It's a simple glance, nod. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, right, sort of thing. Yeah, just easy as that. Obviously, you kind of hear each other at times, and for each person, know your limits.
I was going to just add that one. Damn, you stole one of mine.
Just great minds, man, Rob. Just great minds.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Just,
I was going to just add with the drinks in. If you know you're going to go around the pit, ask the bar for a plastic cup. That solves the glass issue. Also, don't go into a pit with 6 foot long pigs in blankets. They get very greasy and make the floor very slippery. That is from experience.
This raises more questions than answers. We do
genuinely a thing.
I know you're a Thrashatouille and you base your music around food items, etc. But I think I need a bit more elaboration. What's a pig in blanket doing at?
One of our road crew decided for one of our biggest gigs. We were playing with Evil Scarecrow in Chester. He got homemade pigs in blankets, and there was about 6 to 8 foot of them. And he just decided he was going to take 2 of these into the pit, and then people were just starting eating them while in the pit. Typical fashion. Perfect gig etiquette. Share the wealth, But the problem was a lot of it ended on the floor, which made it really greasy. And yeah, we were just walking through sort of the arena, and you just go straight on your ass. So I would not recommend doing that. I will add though, just put yourself in other people's shoes a little bit. If you can see someone that's not enjoying it, then just don't go and try and throw them in a pit. It's possibly not what they want to do. I know your limits. I sound old there, but if you are that way inclined that you want to do drugs, just know that this is what happens when I do it. Maybe it's not a good idea to shove a load of things up my nose and then go in a pit because I get violent. The same with alcohol, or the same if you're sober.
I mean, I think we could probably say be aware of your surroundings. Keep an eye on the people around you. Gauge their comfort levels if you can.
Yes.
And as we've said quite a bit in the course of this discussion, someone files, help them up.
Yeah. Be nice. Be friendly. You'll make a new friend.
You will. Definitely. Couldn't agree more with that one, Rob. Couldn't agree more. So, guys, anything else that you just want to briefly touch on before we call it a night? Because everyone's happy with what we've discussed tonight. I feel like we've set the world. I feel like we've set the world to rights tonight, guys.
It's been a damn good chat.
It certainly has.
Yeah.
I feel like like Jim said in some of his Instagram posts that people do need to talk about more about this. So this will definitely not be the last time we speak on it. that's for sure. Because we've had not me, because I'm not in a band, but everyone, Sean, Grant, Jim, Rob, they are all in bands. So we're getting, and they're all in across the board of different genres as well. So I think the next time we should get a fan's point of view for the next one. So I think that'd be pretty good. So I will leave everyone with the Get Heavy Creed. I hope Sean's been preparing. But the rules of the pit are the rules for life. All right, Sean. Come on.
Oh, you make me
Oh, come on, Ginny. Let's
audio was
just.
cutting out. I didn't realize you were asking for it.
Oh, where? Do you know what it is?
If
Right.
someone falls, you pick them back up.
Fucking suck you, mate.
You have to hire us first.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for your time.
It's been brilliant.
It certainly
Thank
has.
you.
We're going to go and we'll not be playing any tunes tonight, guys. We're just going to be heading out and raiding over to our good friends. So, yes, Evil Penguins just stated there, don't be a dick. So, yeah, hang around. We are going to go and see Tank the Tech, who is streaming live on Twitch. So, hang around and we'll see you, everyone, really soon. Big love to you all.